Hi there, I'm Jill Chivers from shopyourwardrobe.com.
And I'm Imogen Lamport from Inside Out Style.
And we're going to pick up today on a video that we did in our last series on style cycles. You guys seem to really enjoy that topic and had a lot to reflect on in terms of your own style cycle. So we thought we'd talk a little bit more about style cycles and how you might identify your style cycle, or what some of the pieces of it might be. But maybe we should just start with a quick recap on what style cycles are and then talk about how you can identify yours.
I think we all have a kind of timeline, inbuilt timelines within us. And these are often things that it's when we feel like we need a change in some way or other. So sometimes it's how often do you need to buy a new car. It might be how often do you need to change jobs, how often do you want to move house.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things that
boyfriends.
Boyfriends, whatever. You know, and for some of us, then there's an element to how often do we need to kind of maybe change our wardrobe a bit.
Yeah. And in the last video we talked about how Imogen's style cycle is shorter than mine. Yours sort of 2 to 3 years, yes. Mine 4 to 5, sometimes 6 years, and what a difference that makes to how we feel about the items in our wardrobe. And even though we both can struggle with letting things go because we choose very carefully, that shorter style cycle is a real trigger for you every couple of years to start looking at new ways of wardrobing.
Yes, and because I have talked to about how I like the challenge of creating new outfits out of my existing wardrobe, and so I take it as a personal challenge to go, can I put my things together in a different way? But then sometimes I will wear them 2 days in a row.
Which I just think is incredible. So, and why style is just so interesting. We can be so different.
Because it's that thing I go, oh, I really like that, I'll wear it 2 days in a row, I like it so much. But then, you know, it's that sort of thing where it's almost though that, particularly I find, and this is why I like living in a seasonal environment, that I do actually get to swap my wardrobe over summer to winter. And
yes.
For me, because I am a cold person, I get cold very easily, I have, in winter, I kind of almost have, and I feel it's uniformy, and maybe that's another reason why I'm not keen, and I want more in winter, is because I feel like I just wear and I seriously wear 5 layers every day. And I'll wear, you know, multiple layers of kind of fine wool knits with maybe a, you know, cotton knit underneath at the bottom layer, and, you know, and then I'll have a jacket or I'll have something over the top, but there'll be about 5 layers on the whole. But because I need so many layers, they have to be dull in a way. They can't be very interesting in their construction because otherwise you can't put them on top of each other.
Yeah.
And so therefore I feel, particularly towards the end of winter, I'm going, oh, I just need something new. This is like boring me out of my brain. And I don't know how many ways I can put this together in a different way. Like, I'm struggling with it.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing that where then I'll think, oh, I need to bring in something new, a new top layer or something that feels like it's different. And
novelty is an important wardrobe characteristic for everybody. But what it means, how you get it, and how often you need it either in everyday outfits and in a wholesale way, I think is where style cycles is really interesting. And for me, I have a really long style cycle. I mean, I have things that go back to my corporate life, not worn in the same way, of course. And that's what's so interesting in hearing you talk about that, is how short that is for you. Even a season of 3 months can start to feel very constrictive and constrained. Whereas for somebody else, there might be a great relief in knowing I don't have to think about the construction of my outfits for 3 months. And that's what's fascinating.
What's quite lucky is that, because I live in a, you know, in a city where we basically have a 3 to 5 months period where it's cold, that after that I put all those knits away. I don't see them till the next year. So I have many that are actually at least 4 or 5 years old. Right. But because I get to have a different season in between, then when they come out again, and maybe I'll add a little something new every winter, that it doesn't feel, you know, but if I had to keep wearing them for 9 months of the year, which if I lived in some parts of the world, that would be, you know, more likely, that I'd probably then have a much greater need to bring more new into my wardrobe than I do.
Yeah, it would feel very boring. So we were thinking there are 2 things that you could think about when it comes to your own style cycle. One is your life, and where, looking back, you notice changes that have sort of seemed to have come of their own accord. Not necessarily things you've made to happen, but changes in career or location or living circumstances, perhaps relationship status, those kinds of things that mark out the cycles in your life that feel natural to you. And then the second thing, we'll talk about that more in a moment, is when you start to feel bored with your wardrobe.
Yes.
And you talking there about how toward the end of winter, which we are in now in Australia, you already are feeling this sense of frustration. There's not enough novelty, not enough individual pieces to create these interesting outfits, which really drive your interest in your wardrobe. Whereas that isn't the case for me. I live in a different part of Australia, not so much winter, but my style cycle isn't that short either.
Yes, and look, I think too, and this is where I often bring in the jewellery and accessories, and that's often the thing I bring in new,
right?
Because I will get, year-long wear out of them.
Yes.
But also too, is it makes me feel more like, well, put a different necklace on, and I
Yes.
feel like I'm wearing a completely different outfit some days.
Yeah.
But I also know that, or I'll just bring in a different colour of the same thing.
Yeah.
Which, because I need those layers, it kind of works. But it's that sort of thing like we're in spring now.
Yeah.
And
supposedly.
We had one nice week and it's gone back to cold winter again.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of thing where you just kind of go, oh, can I just have some warm weather because I'm sick of these clothes?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is that thing where I forget, and I almost describe it as an itchy feeling.
Right.
When of my cycles in my life, one of my timelines is coming towards its end.
Yes.
It's almost like there's a little internal itch that's scratching away and saying the dissatisfaction. And like when they talk about the 7-year itch with relationships, that is basically what it is. There's quite a common 7-year time cycle for people's relationships. And you might find that your relationship timeline is different from your buying a new car, which is different from, because I can happily live in the same house for 50 years and I don't need to move house, but you like to move house much more frequently.
Yes, yeah. And my husband and I have been married 17 years and lived in 6 houses during that period of time.
Versus for me, that's a bit of I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So this is where it is, your cycles aren't the same for everything.
That's exactly right. And I think the thing to think about is what feels natural rather than forced as well. When I look back at my career, about every 5 or so years, something happened. Now, it had a lot to do with the hard work that I was putting in, finishing a degree or whatever it was, but nevertheless, there was a naturalness to it. It wasn't a forced, I made that happen against all odds. It was that things just cycled naturally in that time period.
So it's that sort of thing that often, like every, spring, summer, we are force-fed new clothes by garment manufacturers.
Yes.
Which says, you should have new, you should have new, you should have new.
Yeah.
But we don't always need to. And I do know some people who will basically replace their entire wardrobe because they have a very short style cycle, where they want that entire newness.
Yeah.
And anything older than 2 years is ancient, and they're so over it. But, it's that sort of thing where sometimes it's just bringing a little element here and there.
Yeah.
Can often be enough to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
And I think that's the knowing how much you need to scratch that itch. Now, when you used to do a lot of shopping, do you think that there was an element of a faster style cycle, or what was that itch you were scratching? Was it related to a style cycle or something completely outside of this?
Well, I'd probably need to be lying down to answer that question sufficiently. Might be that itch had many elements to it. But from a fashion perspective, there was a sense of accumulating and you're not having enough suits in enough different colours. I'm not wearing navy, I'm not wearing black, knew what my colours were, so I need to have colours.
Yes.
And there's this sense of needing to fill up categories. I don't have a rust coloured suit, which of course very necessary in life. And so there was this sense of sort of picking out the details within a particular subcategory. And that tendency is still there for me, and I'm very much aware of it. We've talked about this before with things like, my leopard wrap print mini collection, which, could be enormous if I allowed it to.
Yes.
And finding these minute adjustments on categories. But I could never get rid of my wardrobe after a 2-year period, unless I can't even imagine what could have happened to me. It would be catastrophic that I would want to get rid of.
The house would have to burn down.
Well, it would, or I'd have to have something amputated to require that degree of quantum change in such a short period of time, and it would be a real wrench. It would be emotionally very difficult.
Out of curiosity, when you were accumulating frequently, were you wearing all the new stuff, or were you still wearing a lot of the old old stuff.
Now that's quite interesting because it was a bit of a mix, but it was like one of those satellite dishes that would just adjust like this. So that still existed,
Yes.
but this new thing came into focus and was something that I just found myself gravitating towards. And that's happened to me relatively recently, since knowing you in the last 5 or 6 years, with dresses, where in summer I will wear dresses almost every single day, and I didn't own a dress when we first started work. Well, I owned one dress, but I hardly ever wore it.
Yes.
And so that's kind of been a good example of, I still have a few things in the separates, you know, pants, culottes, that capri pants, but I find that I just am not drawn to them.
So there is a way where you're moving but you're probably a little bit more gentle, where you don't just dismiss them.
No, I didn't get rid of every single pair of capri pants in one sitting. No.
But you're just kind of gradually moving away.
Yes, yeah, and gentle is probably a good way of describing it, and that's important from the psychological perspective, because the letting go can be quite challenging. Of course, not everybody feels this way. Some people very easily, happily let go of their clothing quite quickly, but that has never,
So it's an interesting thing to think about for you, about, you know, how do your style cycles revolve maybe around your life, your lifestyle, whether you're you know, in with the new, out with the old, or you're more like Jill, which is in with the new and gradually get rid of the old, you know. And in many ways I'm like that too. I don't just dismiss everything because it's something new, but I will over time go, oh, I really haven't worn that in a while. I can't imagine myself wearing it again.
Yeah.
And that's when I'll probably go, no, I can let that go.
Yeah, and I think that itch factor is really interesting. You know, do you have an itch factor?
Yeah. Tell us about your itch.